wasn't pain. It wasn't, anguish or nothing like that. Like I had never been so mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
I felt like my spirit was broken. I feel like, I didn't question my faith totally, but I definitely was just like, yo, what is it? Like, what is this? What is this? Like, at what point am I going to be saved?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sunshine and Rain, a podcast centered around the joys and pains of significant life moments and the good that can come out of giving yourself the time and the space to grieve. I'm your host, Victoria Fortune, and today we're discussing the grief associated with shifting careers. I have guest Cory Townes joining me. Cory is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, currently residing in Brooklyn, New York. I had the pleasure of meeting Cory over 10 years ago. So much has changed since then. I'm beyond grateful to have Cory here to share a little bit more about his transition from having a traditional 9-to-5 to now being a full-time entrepreneur. Cory shared quite a bit of his experience in a Medium blog he posted almost exactly 5 years ago. I remember it was in August. His openness around the depression he felt and even questioning his existence was extremely brave. Today, we're doing a deep dive around what it's been like for Cory these past few years and how he's managed to cope. So let's jump right into it. Hi, Cory.
What's happening? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you feeling?
I'm good. That was so good. I feel like I'm on we're not going to say any networks because they ain't sponsor this, but I feel like, like public access radio, like that was like Channel 12. Everybody know from Philly, you know what Channel 12 is. I feel like I was on Channel 12. That was awesome, friend.
Thank you. But can you believe we met over 10 years ago?
Yeah. Was that in the elevator?
I was just about to mention that. It was in the elevator of 145 West 45th Street in the heart of Times Square. And I always said to myself, wherever all these Black people are going on the 12th floor, I need to work there.
Yeah.
That was epic, seeing so many powerful, amazing Black people with their laptops. I'm like, I don't even know what they're doing on their laptops on the elevator, but I need to be there. So yeah, let's take it back to that time. Give us a little background. What was life like for you in 2012 when we first met, and how long had you been living in New York?
Yeah, so actually, if I'm not mistaken, it might have even been 2013.
You might be right. Yeah,
it's 2013. So I'm originally born and raised in Southwest Philadelphia, and at that time, I've been kind of creating a certain type of career for myself in Philly, just kind of working. I don't know. I guess it's like a early age correspondent, like media correspondent. Like that was something I always wanted to do, like work for an MTV or work for a Complex or something of the sort. So like for me, I really, really wanted to do that. So I kind of created that lane for myself in Philly. So anytime, artists of the era would come to Philly, I had a great relationship, or I created a great relationship with the people at Live Nation. Mm-hmm. So whenever guys would come or whenever artists would come, to the city to like tour, perform or something like that, I was hosting shows, parties and things of the sort back in Philadelphia. And I had it so that I would host a lot of like concerts and stuff. And instead of getting paid, I was just like, yo, just give me 15, 20 minutes with the talent themselves. So everybody from, I was the first person in Philly to interview Kendrick Lamar. That's something I hold very high on my jacket. But like everybody from Kendrick to Schoolboy Q to A$AP Rocky, Lil B, this is kind of dating back where we were at the time. Big Crit, like anybody from kind of like this was now known as the blog era who was coming to Philly. I would host their shows. But the entire time I was kind of creating my job in Philly, I knew that I was a big fish in a small pond. And that's no shade to Philadelphia being a small pond, but I wanted to be a big fish in a big pond. So I was very adamant about trying to move to New York. Made in America weekend, so that's Labor Day weekend of 2013. One of my really, really close friends, fraternity brothers, John Petty, had gotten hired earlier that summer. Yeah, JP, that's my dog, man.
Shout out to JP.
Shout out to JP. Earlier in the summer, actually, just kind of going back, earlier in the summer, me, him, and our girlfriends, his now wife, but my girlfriend at the time, we all went on a group trip to somewhere in Delaware. I forgot where, but we did like a couples trip. Mm-hmm. And I remember he took time out of the trip to do an interview like a job interview, and he would later get hired at that job. He got hired at Translation, which was the advertising agency.
Yes.
Created and owned, operated by Steve Stout. He may have been gone, like I said, that might have been top of summer, so maybe around 2.5, maybe 3 months. We had a chance, we like connected again during the Made in America weekend, and Translation was the agency for Budweiser, which was the sponsor for Made in America at the time. So I just remember me and JP literally riding around after Made in America, and we were talking. He's like, yo, like, I think you should give advertising a shot. And I was just like, I don't know anything about advertising. I took up marketing in school, but I didn't, there wasn't many opportunities to learn what advertising is in Philadelphia at the time. And he was just like, yo, I think you're thinking too much about it. He's like, yo, you tweet, right? Like, and my friends always used to like make fun of me of saying like, yo, you're Twitter man, like you're really good at Twitter, and, things of the sort. And, Twitter Twitter had become a major vehicle of like the elevation of my career in ways. It was a big way as to how people kind of found out who I was. So he was just like, yo, you tweet, right? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, yo, like you should look into copywriting. Like copywriting is Twitter. You're basically finding a way to say and craft and create a message in using a shortened amount of spaces and characters. So I was like, okay, good logic. And yeah, I mean, long story short, I applied for an open copywriter position at Translation. Came up, did my interview. I think it went pretty well. And while I was waiting to hear it, like, I had so many opportunities to kind of go up to New York before that, and they all fell through. So like I was at a point of, I was kind of like, I'm not going to get my hopes up. Even having someone on the inside, I'm not going to get, excited about this or whatever. And, JP told me, he wasn't supposed to, but, true to the ideals of the bond, he did. He basically told me that I was in contention for an open role with one other candidate. And she was going to get hired, but she had to take 2 weeks in order to quit her previous advertising job and like move. So Translation was going to bring me on for 2 weeks while she quit her job. And basically I had to like prove myself,
like a test trial. Okay.
Or just like they were going to get some 2 weeks of free 2 weeks of work out of me and then probably kick me to the curb.
Wow.
But he's like, look, if you take the job, you can come up here and you got 2 weeks to basically prove to them that they should like keep you.
Is that even legal?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. But this, this is a story. This is an indication of how my story became to be my story. And, I remember getting the job offer and they were just like, hey, we want to hire you. And they didn't frame it as JP kind of kept it real with me. But, they basically said the same thing, like, hey, you got 2 weeks. And I was working at Apple Retail at the time in Philly. And I remember I kind of sought advice after I got the interview. I literally just kind of quit on the spot at Apple. Like, I was just like, oh, yeah. Like, I was telling some of my close friends there, like, yeah, I'm trying to move to New York. And I remember I got the interview. I got the email that I got the offer letter and stuff. I sent the joint back. I went on lunch. I remember I got lunch. I took my Apple shirt off. I autographed it. I put it on the lockers, and basically told like my store leader, who was a very big advocate of me going out and moving to New York. I told him what happened. He was like, yeah, go ahead. And then I quit my job.
Wow. You went out with a bang.
I went out with a bang. Yo, yeah.
I wonder if it's still there.
It's probably not still there. But I would if anyone who works at Apple, they give you what's called a clap out. Like when you do leave, like they like scream at the top of their lungs throughout the entire store and they clap you out. When I got home, and of course I did this completely the opposite way. I called my mother, my father, and my stepdad on I guess 4-way. And told them about it. I didn't want to tell them about it beforehand because, again, I didn't want to get excited or get them excited. And just told them about the opportunity. Like, hey, I got a job offer in New York, 2 weeks, whatever. What should I do? And I remember my dad was like, are you prepared to come back home if it doesn't work? And I was like, yeah. He's like, are you prepared to go look for another job if it doesn't work? And I was like, yeah. He was like, then I think you should go. Because it's just like, for what could happen, as long as you're prepared for what can happen, you're completely ready for what could happen.
That's a bar.
And I was just like, all right, cool. I ended up calling one of my fraternity brothers, my man Rory, who's on now on the Rory and Maul podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Rory and Another one of our fraternity brothers, my man Mike, they were roommates in Jersey City. I told them about the opportunity. They were just like, yo, come stay on our couch. I stayed on their couch for about 2 months. Kind of a little bit of a foreshadowing, but yeah, I mean, I ended up getting the job. I ended up taking the job. Bud Light was my client at the time. And this was like when the Ritas were like popular. So like, you know, they were developing new flavors of like all the Lima Ritas and Mango Ritas and stuff like that. And, you know, it was my first time ever really working in like an office setting. So like, I didn't have the experience, but I wasn't like, I was ready for the moment kind of. And, you know, I think they could tell that I had just like some potential and promise. Like as someone who didn't know anything about anything, I was very good of like, you know, getting up taglines and, you know, hey, we need to portray this type of messagery. What does this sound like? And I would, you know, give them a quick little one-liner, you know, that could fit under 140 characters. And they'd be like, oh, that's good. So what ends up happening is I didn't even make it the full 2 weeks. I think the middle of the second week, some members of the other team who worked for State Farm kind of came to me and was like, hey, you know, we're developing, you know, State Farm. We're developing a voice for State Farm. You know, it wasn't, we had black people there. You did notice about all the black people that was holding the laptops and stuff. I never really thought about that, but yeah.
Yeah, they were holding those Apple laptops with their
but
life.
it was my minority black in there. So yeah, it was very white. It was very white in translation when I was up in there.
That's so interesting.
But you know, we were considered, I won't say an urban agency, but like we were the black agency. We were the agency who like did black. Can we curse on here? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. We did the black shit. So yeah, you know, like, you know, I remember like these two girls was just like, hey, like, you know, we have to ask you, like, do you know basketball? And I was like, I'm a black man from Philadelphia. Of course I know basketball. And they were like, you know, that's important for the role because they were in charge of running the entire, like, if you remember, like, you know, Chris Paul, the basketball player. You remember the Cliff Paul?
I do not.
So Cliff Paul was a marketing campaign that that Chris Paul did with State Farm, where basically they did they made it seem that Chris Paul had a twin brother named Cliff Paul.
Okay, I think I remember.
Cliff Paul
visual.
had like fucking, I don't know, he had like a suit on and he had this weird mustache. It was Chris basically, and their whole shtick was trying to make it so that people didn't know if he really had a twin brother, and like the whole I guess tagline of the campaign was born to assist. The same way Chris Paul was born to assist on the basketball court, Cliff Paul was born to assist with people in their insurance claims and helping out the neighborhood and like so on and so forth. So a big part of the campaign was actually running the social arm and the social extension of Cliff Paul. So I was Cliff Paul, like on all social platforms.
That's hilarious.
Social platforms and like I was Cliff Paul on Twitter. I was Cliff Paul on Instagram and stuff. And they were just like, do you think you can do that? And I was like, absolutely. Like it was no hesitation.
No idea. That's crazy.
And then, yeah, that's kind of how I got hired full-time at Translation.
Amazing. And then from there, I remember you working at Ebony. From there, you went on to so many other iconic companies that are well-respected in the industry. What would you say was the biggest thing you learned about being in those corporate environments that you probably didn't know before you got the job?
I would say the biggest thing that I learned working in those type of environments, it's a huge game of what have you done for me lately? If you are blessed enough to be taught, being taught isn't a given. It's very much sink or swim.
Especially in advertising.
Advertising and media. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you. I probably picked the two worst, the two worst, I guess cultural or white collar jobs or fields to work in as far as advertising and marketing and editorial. It's definitely what have you done for me lately? If you know, being taught is not a requirement. All skin folk and kinfolk. And I can't even say the experience is what you make it. Like I do feel like, you know, I have had the chance to work at a bunch of really dope companies. I've had a chance, and dope from the outside in, I've had a chance to put my hands on and touch some really, really cool work with a lot of cool clients and brands and stuff. But I can honestly say I might have maybe had one one job where I felt I was taught in different places and spaces, but one job I felt as I was cultivated, and that was at Ebony.
Wow.
Like I had my guys Marcus Collins and Chaucer Barnes at Translation.
Love them both.
You know, and I think those guys were very important to my early career because they showed me what it was like to be Black men and be cultured Black men in spaces like that.
And I feel like Chaucer's still there. He's at United Masters,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And like Chaucer, like
adjacent. Yeah.
Yo. But yeah, like having guys like Chaucer and Marcus really kind of just showed me what Black men look like, you know, in the advertising space, and, you know, specifically both of them and how they describe and define what culture is, like even seeing what Mark has done now, like recently with like his book and stuff. But aside from them two, my mentor Kieran Mayo was my head editor at Ebony, and she was probably the only person that has ever really like taught me something as it pertained to like work.
Yeah.
You know, like she taught me how to be a better writer. You know, I always called myself, you know, I used to do freelance writing before I moved to New York, and that was kind of another way that I kind of got my name out there, you know, just, you know, writing about specific like music, cultural stuff, whatever. And just having bylines, you know, ultimately getting bylines in different publications like Fader and Complex, Rolling Stone, Vibe, you know, joints like that. And you know, I was just kind of writing off of like the muscle. I was writing just off of what I've been taught, like through school. And working at Ebony, you know, I always made it clear, like, yo, I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to J school, nothing like that. But Kieran had taught me the game. And, you know, I've always been very appreciative of that, because that's kind of the lessons that she taught me just through writing has helped me out through my career, just especially on working on my own. But yeah, being taught isn't like a given. So that's probably like one of the main things that I feel like I've learned in my time working.
Mentors are so important, and being corrected isn't a given either. Like when someone takes the time to correct your mistake or let you know where you went wrong, I feel like you should hold on to them. That's a sacred person in your life.
1,000%.
At what point did you decide that the 9 to 5, you know, it wasn't for you any longer?
I always say that I didn't make the decision. I think the decision was made for me. I would say around like 2018. I would say at the top of 2018, you know, in my career at the time. So like handling any and everything from in the entertainment section of the platform was kind of a big deal. And I remember I had a chance to go to Complex Con that year, and I saw a friend of mine. I saw a friend of mine there, and he kind of was asking me like, you know, what I'm up to, what I've been doing, stuff like that. And he's like, yo, you know, I have a role at my company that I'm at that I think you would like be great for. And I was like, well, what's the company? He's like, well, it's a secret company. You know? But the company was ran by a very famous athlete. It was facilitated by a very famous athlete. And, you know, it seemed dope. You know, the opportunity seemed dope. Like the job profile seemed dope or whatever like that. And it was kind of one of the first times I've ever got poached. And I remember I took the interview. I bodied the interview. I bodied the interview so much to the point that they wanted to bring me in for like a social media role or something like that. And I bodied the interview so much, they were like, we want to change your role. We want to change your role to like a storytelling manager, where basically my job was to be the person who that if they were ever going to come on to pitches and campaigns and stuff like that, like my job is the person to craft the story around whatever their ideas is. I make the story behind it. I'm thinking this is a match made in heaven, because like storytelling,
suiting for you.
storytelling is kind of, you know, I would say is a natural gift of mine. And you know, I remember I took in the interview, we did the thing. I got a crazy pay bump, so I was just like, yo, I'm out. Like I left Cassius. I was there for about maybe 9 weeks.
Wow.
I was there for about 9 weeks, and
what happened?
I mean, basically, kind of what I was saying, as far as like,
as far as what you can share.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely a thing of, you know, it ain't what have you done like I said, it's what have you done for me lately, and being taught is not a requirement. What I would later find out is, like, I got hired there, and I've never really been a person to be told that I'm not like doing well. Like normally, like, you know, of course, everyone has faults, but like for me, my course correction is pretty on point. Like if you tell me this is not right, then I'm like, okay, I'm back on it. or I make the necessary adjustments to fix it. And I just wasn't getting that. Like, I just kept like, it seemed like one step forward, two steps back at every turn. And, you know, they basically assigned me to, you know, the friend of mine who kind of brought me into the position for him to like show me the ropes. And like, I'm just not getting it. I'm like, yo, I've never been a person who just not getting it. And I learned maybe 6 weeks into the job, me, my mans, and the assistant of one of the presidents were out walking for lunch. And I hear her ask him like, yeah, so like, when is your hearing? Or something like that. And he's like, oh, it's coming up or whatever, something. And I'm just like, your hearing? What you mean? He's like, oh yeah, I'm on probation. And I'm like, it's in jail, nigga? And he's like, no, I'm on probation here at work. And I remember being like, oh, you're on probation. And then I'm like, if you're on probation, why they got you teaching me all this shit? Because I'm just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, and it just let me know that lets me know that I was kind of set up for failure from the jump. Like, he was basically teaching me all of like just bad habits or like bad practices or like what I'm thinking is the blank company way is the wrong way. So, you know, this, like I said, I learned this maybe about 6 weeks in. Mm-hmm. I start feeling the dread for anybody out there that has ever been like fired or laid off. Like, you know, you feel when it's coming. It's like the Grim Reaper's like around every corner, nigga. Like, you feel the cold in the room. Like, you just, people's demeanor's kind of changing around you. And I would say that my last 2 weeks of the company, I started feeling that. And it was such a anxiety-filled time for me because, like, you know, it's almost like you see yourself slipping off of a muddy hill, and the more you try to grab, the mud just keeps like getting worse, and you just keep sliding down. I definitely remember they assigned me mad work. Like, I bust my ass them last 2 weeks. And you know, at this point, I'm like, yo, I'm trying to keep my job, so I ain't trying to like whatever y'all trying to give me, I'm with it. But then it was also things of like, they had ideas, or I was given ideas for a lot of different things that they were like, oh, that's a good idea, or this is that. And then they would ask me for contacts to facilitate those ideas. And I kind of was like giving it, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I feel comfortable like with connecting you with these people. Like, these are my peoples. And of course, if I do the thing, then, you know, right. Like, you know, at this point, I've been very blessed to be able to, you know, meet a bunch of different people from a bunch of different places that do a bunch of amazing things, Victoria included. And, you know, I've always been taught just as a kid, you know, how important your, you know, not even your connections, but your relationships are. So I remember like kind of thinking that was a little weird. Like, y'all are hitting me to like, oh, well, can you connect us with?
Especially if you're working for one of the biggest athletes in the world.
I'm like, can you connect us with this person? I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. So whatever the case, it was April. It was 420. They fired me on 420. And I remember I didn't even get high like that back then. I got high as shit that day. No, actually, I didn't. I was kind of sad. Yeah, no, man, it's like the writing be on the wall.
What did you feel? Like, I know that you said you felt sadness, but
I mean, I just felt
anything in your body that
I've never been somebody to been told like I'm not enough ever in anything. And like, I've done mad things in my life that have placed me through adversity. You know, I've joined sports teams and I've joined organizations and I've done, you know, so many different things where, you know, it's like you go through things to get to where you want to get to. And I've never had someone tell me like, yo, you just not good enough. You just don't fit. You don't fit what we got going on here. Like, we up here and our taste levels up here, our quality of work is up here, and like you down there somewhere. Like, you know, and I think optically hearing that from someone like her was crazy. Cause I'm like, damn, dog, like, you know, not even, I told you, like, I got laid off in maybe like 8-9 weeks. So like, not even 2 months ago, y'all was like, yo, we think you can be. And on top of that, I distinctly remember they were trying to have me do aspects of a job. Like, I've worked in social media before, like obviously as a copywriter. They tried to have me do analytics. If you talk to anyone who does analytics, that is the most like numbers crunching, like you got to know your stuff. Like one of my old roommates is I would probably say is an analytics whiz. He works for agencies and stuff like that, even still to this day. And I'm coming to him with the work that they're asking me to do. He's like, Cory, there's no way that you can do this work. And he's like, and not because you're not talented. He's like, but bro, like literally, I went to college for this. I have X amount of years in like doing this. Like, this is work that I should be doing. There's no way you can do this. Like, they're basically setting you up for failure.
Yeah. And was this the moment that like made you decide that, you know, I want to do my own thing? Because I want to bring the blog more intimately into the conversation, if you don't mind. You wrote a blog in 2018, and you talked about how, I don't know if the dates are right, during a time period, whether it was 2016 or 2018, you broke your leg, you developed blood clots, you were isolated from your friends, you were battling depression, all while being laid off. Can you describe what you were experiencing mentally with all that combined during that time?
I mean, I feel like me losing that job. I feel like me getting laid off from that job, and this is 2018, and I would say maybe the next 5 to 6 months, I don't think I got work. I think I might have, if this is April, I didn't get my next job until maybe August. So that's what, like 4 or 5 months. Those are probably the lowest time of my life. Just because it just felt like, you know, anybody that has ever looked for a job know that a job search is a job in itself. So I felt like I was literally, you know, waking up every day, clocking into looking for work, you know, sending my email to X amount of places, hitting up so many different contacts, you know, and you know, it shows you, again, going back to what I learned, like, no, it's what have you done for me lately? You know, all the people that I worked with, or, you know, colleagues I've had at different places and stuff like that, you know, I was their best friend when I could get them, you know, placements in the magazine, or, you know, if I was connecting them with this person or that person, whatever. And then when it came time for me, it was like, you know, if the phone did ring or the phone did get picked up, like, it's like, it's very much like, I'll see what I can do, winking the gun. And, you know, yeah, I was just like, bro, like, I'd never been in a rut like that. And the only time that was comparable was kind of what you were saying in 2016. I did have I broke my leg. I fractured the bone, kind of connected my leg, my foot to my ankle, in 2 places, and I ended up developing blood clots from it. Wow. So like, aside from even just like being on the mend, I did it 4th of July weekend, so the rest of my summer was shot. You know, Vic, you know, my friends are, especially back then, we were a rambunctious crew. So like, cats would kind of come in my room, you know, I'm laid up, and cats come in my room and be like, hey man, so we about to go, it got to the point where they stopped telling me about the places they were gonna go. Like,
I remember,
you know, we about to go out. You need anything? You need some water? You need some something? And I'm just like, nah, bro. You know what I'm saying? I'm just sad. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I lived vicariously through my dogs. And, you know, it was very much, that was like kind of like a similar time. But, you know, that job search in 2018, that was definitely my darkest moments. You know, I had battled what I would call, at least I was less educated on it then, but like, you know, I think, you know, just the depression surrounding employment or lack of employment is a very real thing. And, you know, when I broke my leg and I was, you know, down and didn't really have much, like, that was, I kind of felt that a little bit then, but in those months where I just kept looking for work, you know, I just felt hopeless. I felt alone. I felt like, you know, people didn't understand me. You know, I kept finding myself, you know, just kind of hoping and asking for one shot and one opportunity to be able to show what I can do, because I knew that I was talented. I knew that I had, you know, gifts and stuff like that. You know, I got desperate to the point I'm like, yeah, I'll work for anything. Like, I'm kind of hitting people up. I'll write for this, or I'll do this, or, you know, just trying to find some sort of traction with anything. And I didn't really have it. And my breaking point came at a point where I saw a job working in hip hop for a streaming company, a music streaming company. And I knew people that worked there. And, you know, I was like, yo, I think I'm a good fit for this role. And I, you know, had regular round of interviews. I had interviews with, you know, the heads of other departments. Like, I had interviews with my direct boss. Like, I'm in there telling him about genres of music that he didn't even really know about at the time. Like, I remember telling him who Kate Renata was, and I thought, like, I'm like, bro, there's no way you have this role and you don't know who Kate Renata is, but that's a whole different joint. But like, I smashed it. They're like, yo, you this. And I remember I was coming from an interview when I got the news that I didn't get the job. And the HR lady told me that out of, I think, 16,000 people, I made it to the last 3.
Wow.
And the guy who got the job, who's actually I know now, and that's my guy, he got the role, because I asked, I'm like, well, why didn't I get it? And she was like, well, he has experience at a streaming company. And I'm just like, damn, I can't even hate on that. Like, you know what I'm saying? I didn't know him back then, but I was like, I can't even hate on that. Like, that makes sense. All right, you know, for sure. And I just remember, like, that was a day that I was just like, I don't got it no more, man. Like I didn't know. It was the first time I ever really considered like ending my life. Just because I was tired. Like it wasn't pain. It wasn't, you know, anguish or nothing like that. Like I had never been so mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like my spirit was broken. I feel like, and I didn't question my faith totally, but I definitely was just like, yo, what is it? Like, what is this? What is this? Like, at what point am I going to be saved? Like, what else do I have to give? Like, I just didn't know. And I was just tired. Like, I was just tired. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I think the main reason why I didn't end my life that day, was because I had like this ringing thought in my head about my mother and my sister, and just like what that would have done to them. And you know, I remember at the time, you know, I had a pretty estranged relationship with both my father and my stepfather, so like they didn't even really come into the picture at the time. And it was just me thinking about my moms and my sister, and just like I was like, yeah, I can't bear to think about like putting them through that type of pain. And you know, I went to sleep. I talked about it in my piece. I talked about it in Still Word. I just went to sleep that day. And I remember the next day, a friend of mine, Brittany Lewis, she recommended me to, you know, a gentleman. He had a music distribution label that needed, you know, like some work. I got hired there. That job kind of carried me into 2019. And January 2019 is when my DJ career started.
Wow. Whew. Well, thank you for sharing that and for being so vulnerable. Usually when people think of grief, they don't think about the grief that you experience when you've lost a job or when you're going through the job search. I know so many people out there can relate. I have friends that we both know personally that have experienced the same grief that you're talking about. So I'm just so grateful that you're sharing. What made you want to share this experience with the world? Because everything that you've shared here on this podcast, you allude to in your blog that you wrote in 2018, which was so brave. What prompted you to do that?
So, I mean, I felt like at the time, you know, I had all these thoughts in my head. And, you know, I remember at a certain point, you know, and I don't even think I even really told them this, but at a certain point, I started to feel resentment towards my roommates because at the time, you know, like I'm down bad, like I'm struggling, I'm trying to find some sort of opportunity. And like, you know, I understood there was nothing that they did, you know, specifically towards me, but like just overhearing them talk about like work and shit, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, my one roommate, Rob, man, shout out to Rob. Rob, we've been saying this for years. Rob could sneeze and find an interview somewhere. Like he's just, oh yeah, you know, like that's the guy I was telling you about who's good at analytics. So like analytics is a field for any of the young people watching this. If you're looking for something that's going to keep you paid and keep you a job, look into being analytics for an ad agency. He would just be like, yeah, man, somebody just reached out to me on LinkedIn. Company's trying to pay me 6 figures or something. I don't know if I want to deal with it. I'm just like, nigga, like what? Like, can I please get a crumb of the 6 figures? You know what I'm saying? But, you know, I just found myself like being like, bro, like I keep hearing about this shit every day. Like, so I kind of shut down from them. And, you know, like one of the things they would ask me is like, yo, like, why don't you write? Like, you know, like you're a writer. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that's one of the ways that me and, you know, Chris, you know, my roommate, one of my old roommate, one of my best friends, he was just like, yo, like you write, bro, like try writing. And what he didn't realize is that I had a block. Like I was so stressed out about everything else that I couldn't write anymore. And I remember there was a particular time around, you know, August. That piece, that piece happened in one straight shot, but I had been thinking about this like kind of around the time, so maybe a couple days before. And yeah, I was just like, I had all this stuff on my mind. And for, with me and my writing style back in the day, if someone gave me a topic, like I would literally just kind of like put myself in a space, like a quiet space or a space with music or something, whether it's in my room or listening to, headphones or whatever. And I would just have a wide open blank document and I would just start typing. And, I would just burn. I would just burn through the words as they come across my head and just type it out. And, there's times where if I would be burning through, I would see something and like, ooh, let me, swap this out or delete this or add this. I would go back, immediately do it and go back to it. And I would basically write until I didn't have any more to write about. And from there, I would edit it and then send it in. And like, I don't know, people used to say like, yo, Cory, you're a really great writer. And I think because my style was more so, I don't want to say I didn't put thought into it, but it was literally thoughts to paper that like, I think that's kind of one of the reasons why. And yeah, I feel like just one day I just felt, I don't know, I think God moved me to like get this stuff off my spirit. And I just start writing. And the funny thing is like, yo, I had never used Medium before. I hadn't even used Medium since. I don't even know why I put it on me. I don't even know why I put it on Medium. I think it might have just been like, I looked up like ways to post something or whatever. And I wrote this out and I wrote it out just to get it off my spirit. It was the first time I ever admitted feeling depressed. It was the first time ever saying out loud that like, I feel like I suffer from depression. Like, since like, like I'm in therapy now and, it's therapy has been so amazingly beautiful to me because it's allowed me to be diagnosed with things that like, nah, yo, you do suffer from depression. You do suffer from anxiety. Like, these are normal things. It's not a sickness or anything like that. But at the time, I'm just like, yo, I think I suffer from depression. I think that I'm depressed. Like, it was the first time I ever really talked about those type of things. It was the first time I ever talked about, the differences, the different bad relationships I had with like the two most important men in my life. Why, me and, this person was having issues, why me and this person was having issues. And it was the first time I ever really talked about any of that. And then, it may have took me about 45 minutes to an hour. I remember it didn't take me that long. And I remember I was just reading it. And then, I consider myself a very spiritual person, not necessarily maybe a religious one. But I kept feeling something inside of me. Like it was a voice that wasn't my voice. That was just like, send this to your mom. I send this to your mother.
The
like,
Medium article, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. This is before I even posted it. Right. It was just like, yo, send this to your moms. And I remember, I have anyone who ever met my mom. I have a young mom. Mm-hmm. I have young parents. She's mad vibrant and like, that's spicy tea from Southwest, still. And she had moved out to LA, and so I wasn't seeing her like I was used to seeing her. And I remember I sent it to her. I was like, hey, you got any time? Like, I want to send you something. I want you to read it. And I want you to like, let me know what you think. And I sent it to her. And of course she calls me back. She like, I might have called her then. And she's like, yeah, whatever. And then she FaceTimes me back. Eyes full of tears. Just like, what is this? Not what is this? What's going on? But she probably said, what is this? What's going on? And yeah, I remember she was just like, yo, this is so beautiful. She was like, this is so beautiful. She was like, I'm so sorry that like you've been going through this. I'm so sorry that like, you've been going through it alone. And, I'm sorry I didn't, obviously from a mother's standpoint, from a point of view, she wants to protect her son and stuff like that. And she was just like, I'm so sorry. And like, I was more so kind of concerned or scared because, like I had been raised, I can't even say for better or for worse, but probably for worse or for worse. I have been raised to kind of keep family business within the family. And what I've grown to learn, especially through therapy now, is like that has had an adverse effect on me of like suppressing my feelings whenever I'm disappointed by like older members of my family that I like hold reverence for. So like, if someone, if a parent, grandparent, whatever, uncle, whoever, if somebody did something to me and I didn't like it, I would immediately repress those feelings and not really express those feelings to nobody. I would just kind of like hold on to that.
Because that's what you were taught.
That's what I was taught. Like, you don't talk about this with anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't tell people our business. I mean, this is Black family tropes and shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? And, my situation obviously a little bit different. Like, my father is a celebrity. So, and, even just being raised with the understanding of like, you can't do certain things because you would like, you can't do nothing wrong because you would bring shame to like our family name. You know what I'm saying? You would bring shame to the Towneses. You would bring shame to, me as your mother, or you would bring shame to me as your father.
That's a lot of pressure on a kid.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Do you still carry that pressure as a full-grown adult?
I don't as much. That's why I said I think therapy has helped me out. So like therapy has changed my life from the top of this year till now.
I'm so glad you said that.
For real. Like just, because if not for nothing else, therapy has let me know that I'm not like, it just let me know I'm not bugging. Like I feel like we as Black people, like, I mean, obviously I can speak for myself as a Black man. Like there's times where you feel away and you just think you bugging. And like, there's times where you may ask somebody like, yo, am I bugging? And you'd be like, nah, you straight. We like, am I bugging? But yeah,
women do that too.
I know.
Am I crazy?
No. But like again, I'm only speaking just from my perspective. So I totally and obviously know that women do it. Black people do that.
Absolutely.
But it's like, I think we don't really have many opportunities to talk about, feelings or stuff like that. Like that was the thing. The whole idea of like, you can't mess up because you would bring shame to them, and mess up in the sense of like, do no dumb shit. Like they always made it a point to say like, if you get caught doing something wrong, it's not going to be, 3 young Black men do X, Y, and Z. It's going to be son of, local, celebrity, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, and I was very big on making sure that my family was proud and I upheld that. But what I also realized is that the adverse effect of that was that it created almost a like perfectionist, like, what's the word? Complex with me. Like I've always felt like I can never mess up. Like I can never fuck up. So like, which is probably why when the job shit was happening, I took that incredibly more serious because I'm thinking like I'm messing up. I'm putting shame on my name, the name of those who came before me. Like I never will want it to be a thing like, someone runs into, my parents or something, in the world, in the industry and be like, oh yeah, I know Cory. Like, oh yeah, he sucked at blank company. I almost said that shit too, my bad. But yo, he sucked at such and such company. Like they fired him. Like, so I took that shame, very high. And when I sent the just the raw document to my mom's, I was really kind of like looking for almost approval of like, yo, like I'm kind of talked about what's going on in our family in this, like, how do you feel?
You did.
And she was just like, yo, like, no, like that's your truth. Like, you express yourself. Hey, you need to express yourself and yada, yada, yada. And she was just like, what are you going to do with this? And I was like, honestly, Mom, I just kind of wrote it down to like, get it off my body, like get it off my spirit. And she was like, I think you should like, she's like, I think you should post this. I think you should like make this like known to the world. And I was like, why? I was like, why? And she was just like, cuz. She was like, she was like, number one, son, like, people, and we've seen it all the time. It's like, from the outside looking in, lives are amazing. Lives are wonderful. Lives are this, lives are that. And you never really know what people are going through. And she was like, one thing she always saw in me is that like, she always said that like I have a spirit about me that people gravitate towards, and like, that people, whether they tell me or not, are kind of inspired by. So she's like, yo, you never would know who like would be inspired by what you write. And I mean, she told me that shit, and I was just like, all right, it's like Mom's told me to publish it, so I posted this shit. And so yeah, like, funny enough, like I said, I didn't really even know much about Medium at the time, and like I didn't realize that Medium has its own community of people, readers, everything. And at the time I had a pretty good social following. At the time I had a really good, social following, a pretty big social following. So all I did was just post it, upload it onto Medium and then post it on my joint. Like, hey, I feel like a lot of people have been asking me what this has been going on with me and how I've been feeling. This is how I've been feeling, and I posted it.
What did your dad and your stepdad have to say after they read it? Because I mean, we read the article. You posted it to Twitter and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
What was their response?
In complete honesty, it was two very different reactions. My stepdad kind of went back to old tropes of he didn't appreciate that I put his name out there, and he didn't appreciate that I put, I guess, our business out there for the world. And I remember my dad read it, or because I sent it to both of them before I posted it. That was my stepdad's reaction, and my dad was just like, he might have invited me to the house for the first time in like 6 months. He's like, I need you to come to the crib. He's like, I need you to come down here. He's like, come down here and just spend some time. And like we, black dads, we talked, but we ain't talk. But I will say that it was some of the most conversation me and him had ever had at that point in my life. And ironically enough, if this is August of 2018, ironically enough, on that trip, that was the first time that I asked him what he would think if I told him I wanted to DJ. I remember we were in his studio at the house. He lives outside of Philadelphia, and that was also, I'd probably say, the first time I've really started to appreciate, my dad's house. Just because we used to live in Philly, and I used to love the house in Philly. It was downtown and stuff. It was ill, it was sick. And then he moved outside of Philly, and it was, it wasn't the city. I used to think it was boring. I used to think like, oh man, there's ain't nothing to do out here, and so on and so forth. And then I remember I went there, and like, you never really realize what being in New York does as far as, noise pollution and stuff like that. I went to the house and I felt so much peace. It was so much quiet and stuff. But yeah, like, we were in the studio, and I distinctly asked him like, hey, what would you say if I told you I wanted to DJ? And he's like, I think it would be dope. He's like, do you want to DJ? And I remember having a point where I almost hesitated and be like, nah, I'm just playing. But I was like, yeah. He was like, you sure? And I was like, yeah. Oh. And he was like, okay. And he gets up, he walks out the room, comes back in the room with this box that had like a beginner entry level DJ controller. And he was like, give me your computer. I'll give you like Serato. I'll give you Serato's the DJ system, the DJ program. Wow. And he was like, yeah. And basically just let me have at it. Like,
that's amazing. You literally learned how to DJ from a legend. I mean, it's your father, but you did not learn from.
I did not. So one of the things that I kind of pride myself the most about me DJing is I'm self-taught.
Okay.
My dad never really, like, we've talked about DJing. He's kind of given me like game, but nothing technically. There were no lessons. Like, I started teaching myself from January 2019 on, and been doing it ever since.
I'm so glad you took that leap. I love all of your DJ sets.
Thank
and for
you.
those who are out there who are huge music lovers like you and I, what role did music play in your healing, if it did at all?
Ironically enough, when I don't even know where the phrase or the title "Still Water" came from. Again, I believe I'm more spiritual than religious. I just feel like that was something that was placed in me by God, like just that word. And I saw the reaction from people who read it online and just like, yo, like, this is so, it's so beautiful, and like I relate, and private messages, and people come to me in person and stuff like that. And I just was like, yo, I'm gonna, like, I remember just asking people, like, kind of as a corresponding, tweet, like, hey, what are songs that kind of get you through just anything? What are songs that generate some sort of emotion in you? What are songs that, just generate a feeling? What songs you listen to when you sad? What songs you listen to when you happy? And I kind of created a corresponding playlist based off of people's submissions that was also called Still Water.
What did people submit? I'm curious. What songs?
What were records? Actually, where's my phone at? I can show you. I remember Umi Says by Mos Def was in there.
That's my favorite.
That is a classic. Man, it was a bunch. I remember some Nina Simone was in there. It It was a very diverse list.
Do you have a specific song that has gotten you through some of your dark states?
Yes. Objects in the Mirror by Mac Miller.
Can you hide away? Can you hide away? Sound of silence as they all just watch you.
On and On by Justice.
And are these still songs that you reference from time to time?
1,000%. I feel like Objects in the Mirror. I feel like Objects in the Mirror is a song that kind of, in a way, not hurts me, but like almost like hurts me and heals me at the same time. Like, I feel distinct waves of emotion when I listen to that record. Especially, you know, like I had a chance to kind of meet and kind of get cool with Mac before he passed. So like, and I even think I might have found that record like around the time he passed. So like, that's a song that kind of gets me through. I think that On and On by Justice is a song that for whatever reason always struck me deep. You know, I do think that admittedly so, the one time that I the one time I considered ending my life on a train, I was listening to that record on repeat, and I was actually going to a job interview, and I was kind of like, the train don't seem that bad. It was like, oh nah, fam, not do that. But like, that's something that kind of gets me.
Yeah.
I did find the playlist. So yeah, Umi Says by Mos Def, How Much a Dollar Costs by James Fauntleroy and Kendrick Lamar. Don't You Worry About a Thing, Stevie Wonder. Home Is Where the Hatred Is by Gil Scott-Heron.
A junkie walking through the twilight. I'm on my way home.
Scream by CeeLo Green. And again, these are songs that people kind of like submitted themselves. So like,
I love that.
It was really deep to see what songs people also gravitated to.
Absolutely.
Can't Get Close by Sampha.
And it's like building a sense of community. It reminds you that you're not alone in your grief and you're not alone in what you're going through. So it's been 5 years since you hit send on the blog.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel yourself ebbing and flowing back to that place? And if so, have you learned some coping mechanisms that you're willing to share to those out there going through similar things?
Yeah, 1,000%. First and foremost, I would say that DJing and deciding to DJ changed my life. I think DJing has saved my life. I'm not quite sure if I would still be here if it wasn't for DJing and finding the passion of DJing, which is why DJing is so special to me. But, you know, I think, like, I didn't start DJing to have a job. Like, I started DJing because I wanted to have a hobby. Like, you know, my friends will tell you, like, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna practice for a couple of years, like, kind of get nice, do the homies rooftop parties in Brooklyn. I might spin at Kinfolk, RIP Kinfolk. I might spin at Kinfolk every once in a while, but like, I never would have thought a million years that I'd be where I'm at now. But I think in that, it has allowed me to, you know, I made a conscious decision of like, hey, this is something I genuinely enjoy doing. Like, this is something that I genuinely enjoy doing. I would do it for free, which means I really like to do it. And if I can kind of create a living off of this, and I'm with that too. But with that, you know, it's like, yeah, I have waves of, you know, kind of stagnancy. You know, there's times where I feel like, you know, I'm not good enough, or I question my ability. There's times where, you know, I wonder, like, I remember what it was like to not have a chance. Now I face opportunity. Now I face issues of like, when am I going to take the next step? Like, what's the next step in my career? Like, I feel myself on the precipice of something. You know, I do have help and assistance with my business. You know, I have a bookends rep, but like, doing this with no management. I basically do all this shit by myself. Like, you know, the stress of having to be a manager, you know, a contracts lawyer in some certain instances, like doing all these things on my own. The thing that kind of helps me through is that I go to sleep and I wake up every day knowing that I'm the not to be Greeky here, but I'm the master of my fate and I'm the captain of my soul. And like, I make the decisions in my life every day. Like, I still very much have a structure. I still very much have a schedule, you know, and that was things that I learned from working 9 to 5. But having the power and empowerment to say like, yo, like, this is on me and I control this. Like, I don't got to worry about the bottom falling out for me. I don't got to worry about, you know, in that sense, in the sense of like somebody waking up and like, yo, we're going to like lay off 60 people. That's why I'm so empathetic whenever I see layoffs happen. I'm like, damn, dog, I remember what that feel like. Like, so I mean, yeah, just kind of keeping the perspective, you know, trying to keep the main thing. You know, prayer all the time, leaning into my friends all the time.
I want to touch on that a little bit because you mentioned back when you, in 2016, 2018, you started to feel resentment. Having gone through that and your friends having read your blog, do you feel more comfortable opening up to your friends now?
I mean, the funny thing is, I text my dogs this morning, just randomly, just like, hey, y'all, like, I just want to tell y'all, I love y'all. I'm thankful for our friendship and our brotherhood and stuff like that. I feel like I've my core group of friends, I've always been able to be comfortable with. So I don't necessarily feel more or less comfortable kind of talking to them about things. I mean, I think, you know, they understood that that resentment at that time didn't come from a malicious place to me. It wasn't like I didn't like my friends. Absolutely. It was just kind of like I was very frustrated with the situation. And I didn't even really communicate that with them at the time because I'm like, I know this don't got nothing to do with them. You know, my friends are my family, especially moving to a place like New York where I don't really have access to my, you know, my blood family, you know, like that. Like my friends are my rocks, and yeah, they're a big reason as to, you know, you too, like y'all are a big reason as to why I am as grounded as I am. Why I have the perspectives that I do, and like essentially y'all are ultimately very essential to like my success.
Yeah. Why do you feel like, and this is a question that's kind of been on my heart, but I'm like, how do I frame this? Why do you feel like it's so hard for Black men to have these type of conversations? You're an anomaly. We're having it now, but I can only speak from other relationships that I've had, and not just romantic, but with other Black men, where it seems so difficult to try to get these things out, like to talk about your trauma or your grief or your depression. Why is it so difficult? Does it go back to the tropes that we were taught when we grew up?
1,000%. I feel like I grew up, I would say middle class to upper middle class, right? Like I didn't have many like needs. I didn't have any needs. My wants were always kind of given to me if I deserved them and it was granted them. You know, even just growing up in Philly, like, you know, Philly is a rough place in itself. So like I've been blessed. I think not even blessed, but I've been fortunate to kind of have a perspective of both sides of, you know, being very street smart, but also being very like, you know, educated within the world. But I do think that we were taught as young Black boys to like push through and not to really sit and digest and examine why we feel the way we feel. Like we were taught to like have feelings about things, but push through them feelings. You know, like the phrase "man up" or like "shake that shit off" or like, you know, just anything like that. Like there's various examples of that. You know, we're like, you know, we're taught to not cry. We're taught to not to show weakness. Like, you know, I just think that even in our most emotionally educated selves now, like that's still stuff that we're still like breaking down.
Wow. Is there anything else you want to say out there to our listeners before we wrap?
Listen to your heart. I think things come in divine time, and you know, not even going off of what you believe in. I think divine timing is present and apparent, no matter, you know, religious beliefs or anything like that. Listen to your heart in the sense of what and how it speaks. You know, a wise man once said, "You can do it too," and I truly believe that. You know, hug your family, hug your friends. If you feel like you're alone, hug yourself. Love yourself first.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so powerful. People forget to love on themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actively learning that. Love yourself
Same.
before you can pour into anyone else. Check in with you. Well, that's all we have for today's episode. Cory, you've been an absolute dream to
It's my
speak
pleasure.
with. I have so much respect for you, and I admire you so much. And I admire your courage, your openness, your trust with me.
For sure.
So thank you for being so open and vulnerable. It gives others permission to do the same. And that's our show. I'm your host, Victoria Fortune. Taylor Hosking is our producer. Our recording engineer from this episode is Josh Wilcox at Brooklyn Podcasting Studio. Our cover art was designed by Shaquille Greeley. Music is from Epidemic Sounds. You can join our community on Instagram at Sunshine and Rain Podcasts, spelled out as one word. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe from wherever you get your podcasts. While I love building this community that I hope can support each of us on our healing journeys, I want to remind you that Sunshine and Rain is not intended to be a replacement for therapy or seeing a licensed health professional. I encourage everyone to seek out professional help if needed. Thanks again for joining us, and I hope you have a bright and sunshiny day.